Hello, welcome to Mummies. Today I'm going to do a quick video on painting up these mummies. This is continuing my mission to create my own set of miniatures for using Heroquest. So I've 3D printed these mummies. I prefer them to the ones in the box. The ones in the box don't really seem special enough to me. The mummies are the sort of the strongest undead enemies. You've got your skeletons and zombies that are weaker, and the mummies are stronger, but they look a bit bland and boring in the box, so I figured getting these ones would be much better. I got them from this bundle from Nafarata. It costs $39, which is pretty cheap, and there's a huge amount of stuff in it. You've got to go to the Kickstarter page, weirdly, to see everything that's in the bundle. And he's got a few bundles available. There's things like these necromancers, which are pretty cool. I could definitely see a use for those, possibly as a warlock or something like that in Heroquest or in D&D, you know. All of these Heroquest models are usable in Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, really. The skeletons in this bundle, very nice sort of aesthetic, not quite what I'm going to go with. I've got some other ones from Avatars of War I prefer, but I'm going to use these zombies. They've got a really cool kind of Saxon vibe. I think they look like dead guards roaming the halls for Heroquest, so I think that's really cool. But it's quite a cheap bundle, and you get a huge amount of stuff in it, as you can see. So if there's only 3 or 4 STLs that you particularly like, it's still, I think, worth getting. And you can always get something in there that you didn't really expect. And all the way down the bottom of the page, you can see the mummy pharaohs there with their cool Egyptian headdresses, which is really the aesthetic I was after, for something that looks a bit more exciting than just, you know, a zombie in bandages. So here they are in the slicing software. Got them all there with a couple of alternative heroes, a dwarf and a potential wizard back there, and the zombies I mentioned as well. Trying to make use of the build plate to print as many things off at the same time as possible. I did think about alternative models for the mummies. I've got a couple of old Metal Games Workshop ones which have the right kind of vibe that I was after, in a bits box somewhere upstairs, but I decided to stick with the 3D printing for these because I got the absolute control over how big they print out, so everything is a consistent size and fits on the board nicely within the 25mm squares and all that kind of stuff. And these ones look really cool, so I'm happy with those. And got other bits and pieces out of the same bundle, so that's great. So the model's printed out really nicely. Each of them is a single piece that gets printed, so there's no assembly required other than sticking them on the bases. Sprayed them black and then did a light spray with Wraithbone. Taken this layer paint Ironbreaker, which is a really light silver colour, any light silver colour will do, and painting that all over the metallics, the headdresses and the greaves and the belts and all that kind of stuff, because I find that contrast paints have a really cool effect when you paint them over the top of silver. So that's being done here, and then I'm doing all the bandages in Skeleton Horde. Obviously for the ones that come in the box, they haven't got any metallics on them at all, so just skip the metallic stage and go straight for the bandages and paint them in Skeleton Horde. They'll be very quick to paint, very easy, but I think the additional detail on these is pretty cool. So that's what you end up with, just silver and kind of bony colour, bandage colour. When I did the spray with Wraithbone, it was very light on these because I didn't want to have them being too bright. I wanted to make the bandages quite sort of dark and ancient looking, that's the idea. So I really like making a gold colour by using a contrast yellow on top of silver. I decided to use Iyanden yellow here. There's a few different yellows. This one I think is one of the newer ones. It's got a very slight kind of orangey feel to the yellow, and I think it looked really nice. Made it kind of quite an old looking but rich gold colour. You get the benefits of the contrast paints in terms of the kind of recessed shading that it gives you, rather than painting it just with a gold paint itself. And I think it looks really cool. I was trying to be careful to just paint the kind of trim around the headdresses and paint alternate bands of colour in there, because the idea I was going to do like gold and blue, which feels like a very kind of traditional kind of mummy look from films and all that kind of stuff. Obviously you've got to be a bit careful, because if you go over the wrong bit with the contrast colour, you've got to then use the base colour to correct it, so I'd have to go back over with a bit more silver to then have it ready to put the next contrast paint on. So it's just a case of using quite a small brush, being a little bit careful in how you're putting it on here, and then that makes it easier in the long run. But this is what it ends up looking like at this stage, which is a good start. And then I used Talisar blue for the blue bits on these. Again, putting the blue on top of the silver means you get this really nice kind of shiny blue colour. Looks metallic or lacquered perhaps, or whatever it might be. Whatever it is, I think it looks pretty cool. So it was just a case of filling in the gaps between the gold pieces with the blue, doing any other little details I thought would be appropriate. And finally, for the metallic details, I used Bar Red to get a little red accent in there, because I thought that would look nice, gold, red and blue. All of these colours, I'm putting them onto my wet palette, thinning down just a little tiny smidge of water, and hardly thinning down at all, to be honest. The Bar Red's a very bright red, but you still get that nice kind of shiny, iridescent feel to it from the silver that's underneath. The silver still comes through enough to give you that nice sort of feel to it, which is, I think, looks really cool. So one of the things I wanted to do was to highlight a couple of mummies being different to the others. Overall, for playing a board game like Heroquest, I want to make sure that all the pieces are really obvious of what they are. So most of the mummies I've painted exactly the same way, so as soon as you look down at the board, you know a mummy's a mummy. But there are a couple of quests where you've got a special mummy which has a bit more defense or a bit more health or whatever. So a couple of them I just tweaked the color scheme slightly. Use exactly the same palette of colors, the same blue, red and gold, and just swapped around how they were on the headdresses. So one of them is pretty much just gold and red, and one of them is kind of blue and red, swapping out the red for the gold essentially on that one. And it ends up with something that is consistent enough with the other models that you can quite happily use them all next to each other and they're all just mummies. But if you need to remember that one of them has something special about him, it's quite easy to see and everyone can see it straight away. It's that balance of making it playable and look good at the same time. And it's a nice, quick and easy way to kind of achieve that. So the final details to paint on the mummies is the skin. And I used Dreadful Visage contrast paint, which is a kind of purplish grey sort of colour. It goes on a bit sort of strange, looks kind of like it's not doing very much, but then when it dries it does look pretty cool. It's got this kind of slightly grey purple vibe to it. It's I think it looks like old ancient skin, quite cool. I thought it made it a bit different to the Orcs and Goblins. I mean, sometimes you see mummies with kind of greenish skin. I didn't want that because of the Orcs and Goblins. And I thought maybe this is a sort of colour I could use on the zombie skin tones as well. I think it will look quite good for those. So yeah, it ended up being quite good, but it did definitely look strange as it went on. So give it a chance to dry before you decide whether to keep it or not. And in terms of the mummies in the box, because they are just bandages and they've got a little bit of skin showing through on the faces and the hands as well, then you can just do the skeleton horde for the bandages and Dreadful Visage for the skin, and they're done. So that's quite cool. And then it's a case of just doing the bases. I've done all the flagstone bases exactly the same way on my HeroQuest miniatures. Really like it. It's nice and simple. Basilicanium grey on the bases, and then dry brush them with a little bit of Dawnstone. And I can see here where I've got the big base that I've dry brushed the Dawnstone, and the base underneath the mummy, which has just had the Basilicanium grey. You can see where the dry brushing just kind of smooths it out on the top of the flagstones, gets rid of where it pulls a little bit. So that's why the dry brushing on that stage kind of looks quite good, I think. And then it's a case of washing the entire model, base and model and all, with Army Painter Strong Tone. That's my go-to wash for all these kind of things. And this is just, I've said it in previous videos, just a case of getting more shade into the recesses. Kind of helps the contrast paint. The contrast paint by itself is doing a good job of giving you a bit of contrast and a bit of shadow in there, but then you get a bit more from using the wash as well. And because that goes all the way over everything, then it's a case of lightening up the flagstones a bit again. So then give them another dry brush, this time with a lighter grey. And I've been using grey cere because it feels like quite a nice mid-light grey, even though normally it's used as the colour to go underneath contrast paints. but it works very well going on top of the flagstones, I think. So that's it, nice and simple, very quick to do these mummies. I'm very pleased with the results. I'm looking forward to using the game soon. It's the kind of thing where you can swap a lot of bits around. You know, you might want to put a bit more different colours on the headdresses. I did add a little bit of green here and there just on the 2 special ones, just because it gave them a little accent colour. But yeah, I think it's a nice simple colour scheme. You just have to be a little bit careful to not go over the bits that you don't want to go over with the contrast paints, but if any bits are slightly messy, it's not a big problem. They're really for playing the game with, and that's the key. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do like and subscribe. Trying to get a few more videos out more regularly. I've got a load of Heroquest content. I'll post a link down below. If you want to buy your paints and things, Element Games, there's a link in the description for that as well. Element Games do a really good price and everything. Yeah, hopefully come back for the next one. There'll be some more Heroquest content and a bit more other games, 40k and Warhammer, Old World and stuff like that. I'm doing at the moment, so plenty of various hobby content going on. So come and check that out, and I hope to see you soon. All right, cheers then, bye.